Namaste. It's so wonderful to be here with you guys. I've been wanting to do this particular segment for a little while right now, and this or that has kind of gotten in the way, but here we are now. So I'm very excited to be starting this series. It's going to be kind of a Satsang series that's going to tell stories and kind of illuminate some of the life lessons that comes from these ancient storytelling traditions, these ancient oral traditions of India. And we're particularly going to focus on the Shiva Mahapurana. And the Purans are essentially these stories that talk about the personality of the divine. They talk about their sort of pastimes, their lila, which means the divine play in which they enact in the physical world for our benefit, for our understanding, for our human minds that need something to grasp onto. So I'll kind of illuminate more on that here in a little bit. We're going to start with just some quick chanting, and then I'll kind of dive into what all of this is going to be, and just kind of sharing this experience with you guys. And it's just going to be kind of relaxed and open format, nothing formal. Just going to be here. I'm going to practice with you and share this tradition that I, have found so much bliss and peace and healing in, and just kind of share some of my joys with you, some of my bliss, some of the wonderful things that I've learned along the way in this path. And even I know nothing, I am just I'm a baby. so it'd be great. So I'm very excited to share with you guys. And so let's begin with a little chanting. We'll say hello to some friends of ours, and we'll start there. So let me just begin with chanting a little bit of Om. So if you're here, just kind of settle yourself. Become comfortable, relaxed. Become present in this space. Shake off all the things that you're kind of holding on to, all these things that you've been thinking about, maybe the noise in the other room. Just be here. Be here now. Be present in this space. Just take a nice big breath in, and then just let it all out. Breathing in and out. And now a deep breath. So we're just going to do a little chanting of Om. Just feel like you can join in with me. This is just kind of be to kind of connect us to that higher vibration, to invite that higher vibration into our space, to shake off some of the stress and just singing out to that higher self, singing out to the divine, singing out to that universal power of love and truth. obstacles, that power, that force within us to help us to overcome all things. Like a giant elephant moving through the jungle and encountering even just move it out of the way. So just acknowledging that power within us, removing all obstacles that are keeping us from being here now, from being as we are. To the Guru, the teacher within. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshvara, Guru Sakshat Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshvara, Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Namah Shivaya. Gurave Say Shanti, Shanti, Hari Om, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha, Hari Om. So chanting, chanting is a beautiful way of inviting that higher vibrational energy into the space, of inviting those personalities, those intentions to reside within us, to reside within our environment. And they help to sort of just bring us back to center. Just like in meditation, when we focus on the breath, focusing on the in-breath or the out-breath, focusing on the chanting of the name and over and over and over again. It gives us a center to fall back onto. So today what we're going to be kind of talking about is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we're going to be talking about things from the Shiva Mahapurana. And what this is this is a roughly 1,500-year-old stories, and many of them come from even earlier than that, roughly even 2,000, 2,500 years ago. Some of them are even early, from the 5,000 years ago. And this is going to be different than what most of us in the West have been exposed to. We've been kind of taught that the divine is a very particular thing. It is this, is not that. And that's typically where most of us reside. And the cool thing about the stories, the storytelling traditions, the oral traditions, is that really these are our most ancient roots to the beginning of human thought, a beginning of human spirituality. Before written language, we had tens of thousands, 30,000, 100,000 years of oral tradition that existed. And in the West, we've lost a little bit of that connection to our oral tradition. Whereas in the East, in some ways, yes, they have this strong, infinite volumes of written literature. But so much of its meaning is completely beyond you without the guidance of the oral tradition, without that other aspect. And that's something that has been maintained for 5,000, 10,000 years in the East, through the guru-student lineage, from the teacher-to-student lineage. So what I kind of challenge you to do as we kind of move into this whole segment is to just be open-minded. Let go of some of your preconceptions of what God is, of what the spiritual essence is, and open your mind to something that has infinite forms, that has infinite possibilities. There's a good story that kind of talks about the breadth of the universe. If you want to just talk about it from a scientific perspective. Within the last 20 years, well, not even within the last 20 years, maybe been within the last 5 years, we recently, a satellite that we sent out in the early 1960s, going 5,500 miles per hour towards the edge of our solar system. So the early 1960s. So roughly, almost 70 years ago, between 50 and 70 years ago, this left our atmosphere, going 5,500 miles per hour. And just recently, it reached the edge of our solar system within the last handful of years. So it's kind of hard to comprehend. That's how big just our solar system is. And our solar system is one of literally billions just in the Milky Way galaxy. And the Milky Way galaxy is one of billions in the universe. And there's so much space between galaxies that if our entire galaxy exploded, the galaxy next to us wouldn't know the difference. So the expanse of the universe is unfathomable, meaning that there's infinite possibilities. Anything you can imagine, there's probably a possibility that it exists somewhere. So often we try to define everything in a way that we understand, but there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a lot of value to that. We're developing our own personal relationship. We're developing our own personal conception of, what we experience. What is our experience? What have we seen? What have we interacted with throughout our life? What have we found to be true for ourselves? And I think that's absolutely beautiful. That's how it should be. It's an experiential path. That's what this whole journey is about. But where it'll go wrong is that we believe that our path is the only way. We say, oh, no, I'm right, you're wrong, too bad, and we go to blows for it, and we get so caught up in our preconceptions and our limited belief systems that it totally keeps us from experiencing the beauty of everything. Because every single thing has something to offer us. It has something to lift us up, something to nourish us. It's all there, always. And the only thing that's getting in the way of me interacting with that, or me enjoying the sweetness of that, is myself. No one else. We like to assume ourselves victims of circumstance. But the thing is that's not the case. We're actively creating the circumstances of our life. We're attracting these various things by thinking. Our minds are so powerful. What we think about, we naturally are attracted to. It's like the target fixation concept where, if I think about not wanting to hit a semi, and I look at the semi and I'm thinking about the semi, my unconsciously I start to drift towards the semi, even though all I want to do is not hit that semi. It's the same throughout our lives. Whatever my mind focuses on, I attract. I move towards, whether consciously or unconsciously. So when we're moving into the stories of the Shiva Mahapurana, this oral tradition, what it's doing is essentially illuminating the knowledge of our past heritage, of our human heritage, of our collective human heritage. And one of the beautiful things about the Sanatana Dharma, or the Vedic path, which is essentially the Hindu path, is that it's not meant to be something that tries to convince you to believe what they believe. It's a system. It's a system and a spiritual science, like yoga, that can be applied, like meditation, that can be applied to help you to deepen from wherever you're at. Whether you're an atheist, whether you're a Christian, whether you're agnostic, you're Muslim or Jewish or Zoroastrian, or believing in a shamanic or native religion. It doesn't matter, Buddhism, whatever. It says wherever you're at, come from there, and know that every path will lead you home. Some are nice and twisty and turvy, and they go back and forth, and some they've been paved. Sometimes we gotta bring out our machete and we gotta forge our own path. We got to struggle. We got to work our way. But that's a part of our dharma. It's a part of burning away our karmas. Part of forging our own presence in this life. And what these oral traditions do is because, for most of human history, we don't realize is that most people weren't necessarily educated. Most people didn't know how to read or write. They had a very low level of education. I mean, not that there weren't very highly educated people, because there were. But essentially, you had these people in society that were essentially the keepers of your ancestral past. They were the keepers of knowledge. They were the ones that remembered all of our stories, which is essentially the connection to our deepest aspect of self. And, when we talk about mythology and things like that, we, in a modern sense, we like to just discount them as just stories. But the thing about that is, like, if I told you the mathematical process of how the universe works, or how life is created, or whatever, you would be like, aha, cool. And then 5 minutes later, if not while I was speaking, you'd glaze over and forget 97% of what I said. Now, if I taught you the same thing, the same principles, but attached it to a story with characters that you could connect to these different movements that you can essentially latch your mind onto, all of a sudden, I had this memory. I had this lesson. I had this teaching. And now it's a part of me. It's something that I can share. Something that I can recall when I'm in a low state. When I'm all over the place and I'm lost and I'm looking for that light, looking for that path forward, all of a sudden, that story, song. We experience it in so many things. I mean, the advice that your friend told you 10 years ago, the advice that your mother, your father, your grandfather, your friend, whatever, you remember those things. And they guide you. Those are the guiding principles of our lives. So the oral tradition has a lot to teach us. And one of the reasons these ideas of the forms of the gods and the goddesses and these heroes and these characters from history, one of the functions that they play is that we as human beings really struggle with formlessness. Things that we cannot experience with the senses. Anything that I cannot tangibly interact with is hard. I just don't, conceptually, it's not necessarily there. So at the beginning I mentioned how vast the universe is. So when you think about how vast the universe is, and we're trying to understand something with my tiny little monkey mind, it's pretty hard to wrap my mind around something so grand, something so really unfathomable. It's too big. It's too big, and it's formless. I don't understand how all of these processes, even though I know a lot of the scientific principles and etc., it still is elusive in its nature. I still, how does that connect to me living a human life in this body, in this world, in this time? So, in one time, a devotee asked Swami Vivekananda why, I believe it was Swami Vivekananda, why there was so many gods and goddesses in the Hindu pantheon. And he responded with essentially the reason. So there's over 40 million, 50 million representations of God that comes from various time periods. And what he said to that is that it's essentially taking that grand, uncomprehendable thing and then taking a very small aspect of it and giving it something that we can begin to to wrap our minds around. We can begin to wrap our minds around the form of God, the form of the divine in this way. They perform this function, they perform that function, they come down to teach this lesson, they help us. Whether you're talking, it's the same concept of, Yahweh or God, the Christian conception of God or Allah. It's this formless essence. It's kind of hard for us to grasp. So, the teachings come through various prophets. The teachings come through Jesus Christ, the embodiment of God. And it's the same here in these stories. The idea is that by having a form with a name, with various symbols, etc., various symbolic gestures and representations, they teach us something. They teach us about ourselves. They teach us about what it is that we're seeking when we're seeking to transform, seeking to transcend our limitations. They give us something to look forward towards. They give us a place to, it's essentially like our heading, and in the Vedic tradition, they essentially say that whenever the teacher is needed, the teacher will come. Whenever God is needed, God will manifest. So all throughout the eons, God is manifested in these various forms to guide us, whether manifesting in the form of Muhammad or Jesus Christ or Buddha or Rama, Shiva, Hanuman, Krishna, Shakti, Parvati, Durga, Kali, all of these different ways. And the reason for this is essentially just to guide us through these various time periods. And in the Vedic path, it's over 10,000 years old, 5,000 years old at the very least with its written form, at least 10,000 years old in its oral tradition. And beyond that, they've discovered that from the scientific, when they've looked at the genome of the people of India, those people have existed there for 30,000 years at least. So it's these cradles of civilization, and we're very fortunate that we have this virtually, even though we've lost crazy amounts from our history, we still have more than we could study in a lifetime available to us from this very ancient tradition, arguably the most ancient still practiced religion in the world. And it really gives us a lot of insight into the sort of psychological and spiritual and cultural trends and evolutions that occur throughout the millennia. So I'm very excited to kind of share some of these stories with you guys, and the way that things were going to kind of go is sometimes I might read from this book, Shiva Stories and Teachings from the Shiva Mahapurana by Banamali. This is a really, really wonderful book. Other times I'm just going to recall it from my memory. And we'll kind of weave in some practices and some chanting and just kind of enjoying, and so I really invite you to just be open-minded to really this most ancient conception of the divine and all it has to teach us about ourselves, about life, about the nature of the divine beyond this name or that name. We know so little. Everything I know, everything that is my life, is like the grain of sand in comparison to what is truly out there. So I personally choose not to say anything is this or that. I don't want to limit anything. I don't want to put anything in a box. Because why? Why put blinders on when I hunger deep down in my soul to experience and to see everything, to know everything there is to know, So even when something is contradictory, even when something challenges my ego, challenges my entire conception of reality, man, that's awesome. What a cool moment to have your mind blown, to have everything you believe shattered. What a beautiful, what beautiful grace that is, to have this opportunity to move beyond your limits. And sometimes it's painful. It's like growing pains. I'm expanding my edges. And it's just a process. It's a process that we're all going through. And there's many, many, many things out there to help us along the way. And this is just one of them. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and I'm looking forward to sharing this practice with you. So we'll begin. For today, I'm going to read from this book because I feel that Vanamali does a really nice job of kind of giving you a kind of a brief overview of who Shiva is. So why should we be talking about Shiva? So this will be kind of an introduction to that. So I'm just going to take a quick drink here, and then we'll dive in. Okay. In the bewildering galaxy of the gods of the Hindu pantheon, Lord Shiva stands out as one of the oldest and best loved. He is as old as the Indian culture, perhaps even older. At the time of the cosmic dawn, before the creation of man, he appeared as the divine archer, pointing with his arrow to the unrevealed absolute. The world is his hunting ground. The universe resounds with his presence. He is both sound and echo. He is intangible vibration as well as infinitesimal substance. He is the rustling of the withered leaves and the glossy green of the newborn grass. He is the ferryman who ferries us from life to death, but he is also the liberator from death to immortality. He has innumerable faces and 11 forms as described in the Vedas. The sky and the seasons vibrate with his intensity and power. He grips, supports, releases, and liberates. He is both the disease and the destroyer of disease. He is food and the giver of food, and the process of eating. His divine majesty and power are depicted through symbolic yet highly realistic descriptions of an awe-inspiring figure, far, distant, and cold in his remote Himalayan fastness, as well as close, kind, and loving, a living, throbbing symbol of the divine. He was worshipped as the divine shaman by wild tribes that roamed across the subcontinent before the dawn of history. They contacted him by the use of certain psychoactive compounds and various esoteric rituals. Later, we see him on the terracotta seals of the Indus Valley civilizations. There he is known as Pashupati, Lord of Beasts, surrounded by the wild creatures of the jungle. He is also shown as the yogi sitting in various meditative postures. The rishis of the Vedas looked up at the Himalayas and saw in them his hair. They found his breath in the air, in all creation and destruction in his dance, the Tandava Nritta. The Rig Veda, the oldest religious text known to humankind, refers to him as Rudra, the wild one, the howler, who dwelt in fearful places and shot arrows of disease. Sacrifices were constantly offered to appease him. At that time, religion was dominated by female deities, so the cult of Shiva soon fused with that of the great mother goddess Shakti, who later came to be known as Durga, Uma, Parvati, Kali, and so on. Male and female are but contemporary halves of the whole truth, and some images portray Shiva as Ardhaneshwara, a form half male and half female. He is also mentioned as Ishwara, the enigmatic first emanation from the Brahman. Thus he is the great Lord Maheshwara, and the great god Mahadeva. He is one of the immortals, unborn and deathless. The Shiva Purana equates him with the supreme Brahman of the Vedas. He is also the endearing personal god Shambhunatha, and the innocent Bola with a naive nature. On the other hand, he is Dakshinamurti, the supreme teacher who gave the teachings of the Vedas, the Shastras, and the Tantras to the Rishis. He is the master of every art, the supreme dancer Nataraj, the supreme musician, composer of the Samaveda. Though normally pictured in his fierce aspect, he can also take the form of Sundara Murti, the handsome one, and entrance anyone. To the wicked, he is Bhairava, or Rudra, of fierce aspect. Depending on the needs of the devotees, he is capable of taking on many forms. His forms, attributes, decorations, weapons, attendants, and activities are given in great detail so that he becomes a living reality. As Rudra, he is full of wrath and destruction, but as Shiva, he is filled with all auspiciousness. He has two natures, one wild and fierce, the other calm and peaceful. Of all the deities, he is the one most easily propitiated. Moreover, in compassion there is none to compare him with him. He is the friend of the unfortunates, the blind and the lame, the goblins and ghouls. Those who are despised by others find a place in his entourage. Demons, vampires, ghosts, and goblins who are feared by all are his close attendants. Snakes, which usually people dread and run from in horror, wind themselves lovingly around his neck. His companions are the deformed and the ugly. He is averse to none. He does not belong exclusively to the gods or the sages. His greatest devotees are Kubera, the king of the Yakshas, demigods, who guard the treasures of the netherworld, Ravana, king of the Rakshasas, demons, and Shukra, guru of the Asuras. Wizards, sorcerers, witches, and magicians also worship him. Every spirit, malefic or compassionate, seeks Shiva's grace. His attendants are the Ganas, a wild bunch of hooligans and social misfits. They are ugly, deformed, and misshapen. They drink intoxicating liquor and take drugs such as bhang, a cannabis preparation. They are a totally lawless set of beings. They are a totally lawless set of beings that only Shiva can control. Instead of curbing their eccentricities, Shiva joins in their wild revelries and sings and dances with gusto to the accompaniment of their cacophonous music. But he also keeps them in check. Because of him, they are forced to desist from doing too much damage to the world. He is the supreme yogi, uncaring of material wants, ever immersed in the immensity of his divine bliss. Death stands in dread of him, and the word inauspicious does not exist in his dictionary. Bedecked with skulls and bones, Shiva wanders in the cremation grounds, dancing to the light of funeral pyres, smearing his body with the ashes of the dead. Dangerous forests infested with cannibals and wild beasts, as well as the icy, inaccessible peaks of the Himalayas, are his favorite haunts. In the forest, he is adorned by the wild tribes of Kirata, the hunter. Shiva means the auspicious one, yet everything about him seems inauspicious. He dwells in dark and gloomy caves and jungles and dances in cemeteries lit by the fires of burning pyres. Rattling skulls and drums, he smears himself with the ash from these pyres, drinks poison and smokes narcotics, and enjoys the company of ghosts, ghouls, and goblins. The unorthodox and the casteless, the outside the traditional fold, saw in him the nonconformist who sought ultimate truth beyond ritual, beyond society, beyond matter. He was the first tantric, follower of Tantra, as well as the first Siddha, one with supernormal powers. The casteless ones sought his blessings before dabbling in their magic rites, their sorcery, and their alchemy. The Brahmins, who were the orthodox priest caste, thus found it difficult to accept this wild and fearsome god. As the priest king Daksha did, they held him in contempt. They refused to offer him any portion of their yagnas, or sacrifice, given to the other gods. The story of the Daksha Yagna shows how by the sheer power of his truth, which is the truth of all creation, Shiva came to be accepted as the great God. He transcends the duality of good and evil, right and wrong, auspicious and inauspicious. The Sanatana Dharma, which is the actual name of Hinduism, forces the human mind time and time again to accept the fact that the divine is all that exists, both clean and unclean, pure and impure, auspicious and inauspicious. The same code that gave us the caste system also gave us the image of Shiva, the nonconformist, who challenged all social codes and sought a truth that lay beyond all apparent dualities. There is nothing and no person who could be said to be unacceptable to society. The divine accepts every creature, however ugly or malformed. All the rites and rituals that are employed by the human being groping a path to Godhead have to be accepted by the divine, for that also comes from him alone. Shiva is a symbol of all that is inclusive, universality, of the Hindu view of the deity. Thus the Brahmins were forced to accept him into the fold of their conservative beliefs. By the time of the Upanishads were written, Shiva had become a most important deity. Although initially considered to be inauspicious and impure, he eventually became to be known as Shiva, the auspicious one. He became the inspiration for theater, dance, and drama, and was the favorite figure for painters and sculptors. In the Hindu Trinity, the Trimurtis, Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the sustainer, and Shiva is the destroyer. The divine Trinity thus ensures the cycle of existence. The Shaiva Siddhanta school of philosophy, however, does not accept Shiva as being just one of the Trimurtis. To them, he is the supreme Brahman, to whom both Brahma and Vishnu offer obeisance. He is called Pati, or master, with 5 important functions of Godhead: creation, maintenance, destruction, revealing, and concealing grace. The human soul is called Pasu, or creature, which is tied to the pasa, or rope of bondage. This bondage consists of 3 types of impurities. The first is avidya, or primordial ignorance. Next comes karma mala, the bondage accruing from our actions. Last is maya mala, or impurity caused by attachment to the world of maya. To eliminate the last 2 impurities, 4 types of approaches are prescribed. The first is the way of the servant, or dasa marga. This consists of performing external acts of worship, such as gathering flowers for worship, cleaning the vessels used in worship, sweeping the temple, and so on. The serving of others. This leads to saloka, which means the devotee will be taken to the abode of Shiva at the time of death and reside there forever. The second way consists of the intimate service to God by conducting rituals, having intimate communion with him, speaking about him, writing about him, and so on. This is called Satputra Marga, or the path of God's son, good son. This leads the devotee to Samipya, or close proximity to God. The third way is called Sakya Marga, or the path of friendship. It includes eternal worship, such as meditation and communion, which leads to Sarupya. In this, the devotees attain the form of the deity at the time of death. The last is Jnana Marga, or the path of wisdom. But following this, the devotee attains Sayujya, or union with God. As said before, these disciplines can remove only the first 2 impurities caused by action and attachment to the world. Karma mala and maya mala, the bondage of ignorance or avidya, can be removed only by the grace of God. Thus Shiva is known as Pashupati, or the Lord of all human creatures who are bound by these impurities. Shiva accepts all those who are despised and rejected by others. He destroys the negativity in all and purifies them. He is the regenerator and the reformer. He destroys pomposity by his simplicity and prudery by his defiance of orthodoxy. He is the destroyer of the ego, which is what traps the human being in the ocean of life and death. He can also destroy sorrow and pain and misery. Though he seems a fearsome figure, he is the one who can remove all fearful influences that threaten our lives. Just as the lotus rising from the slime of the pond is still the symbol of purity, so Shiva is the symbol of purity despite dabbling in impurity. His physical body, clothing, and ornaments are also unique. He is white as camphor and wears his hair in matted locks, coiled in the shape of a shell. He has a blue neck because he drank deadly poison in order to protect the world from it, keeping it in his throat rather than swallowing it, and it made his neck turn blue. He has 3 eyes. The third eye on his forehead denotes him as the Lord of Yoga. This inner eye distinguishes truth from illusion and conquers lust. He is Chandrachuda, wearer of the moon, for he wears the crescent moon as an adornment for his hair. Like the waxing and waning of the moon, he is in tune with the rise and fall of the cosmic rhythm. He is Kritavasa, wearer of animal hides. His upper body is covered with the skin of the black antelope. The elephant hide covers his loins, and the tiger skin is his seat. By wearing the male kundala, man's earring, in his right ear, and the female tantaka, woman's earring, in his left, he reveals his androgynous nature. He wears a garland of skulls and carries a skull in his hand as a begging bowl, and often drinks out of it in order to show the frailty of mortal life. He also bedecks himself with rudraksha beads, seeds from a medicinal tree. His vehicle is the bull Nandi, which represents restrained power. The bull also represents dharma, or righteousness. In his right hand he holds the antelope, representing all creatures under his protection. Verminous mongrel dogs, scorned by all, chase after him in his wanderings. Snakes slither up and down his body. His weapon is the trident, with 3 prongs representing the Trinity. He also carries a staff and a noose, the pasa that binds all creatures to mortality. His 2 bows are known as Pinaka and Ajagava. He is the source of the primeval sound Om and carries his drum Damaru while dancing. The boom of the drum represents the vibrations of the cosmic energy. He is the master of music and plays the Rudravina, or lute, designed for him by Ravana. He also carries a bell. He is prepared to make enormous sacrifices for the protection of the world. Though he is depicted in the Trinity as a destroyer, he is the one who protected the world by swallowing the dreaded poison that the serpent expelled. He is also the one who contained the fall of the divine river Ganga when she tumbled down to earth from heaven, thus saving the earth from being deluged by her waters. There is no end to his mercy and his kindness. He is prepared to sacrifice himself for the sake of the world. Modern physics describes matter not as passive and inert, but as continuously dancing and vibrating. Physicists speak of the continuous dance of subatomic particles and use the words of dance of creation and energy dance. When we look at a sculpture of the dancing Shiva, the Nataraj, this description of the physicist comes forcibly to mind. The Nataraj is the personification of this cosmic dance. Modern photographic techniques have been able to project the particle tracks emanating from the dancing image of Shiva. This image is a concrete symbol of the great principle that the seers try to portray, that life is a rhythmic interplay of birth and death, creation and destruction. Scientists have shown this in their particle accelerators. Shiva's cosmic dance depicts the mad gyrations of energy particles. His Damaru beats to the rhythm of the cosmic vibrations, and his energy, or Shakti, is activated by the Divine Mother, personified by many goddesses in the Hindu pantheon, including Durga and Parvati. The Divine Mother is the enchantress who creates and nourishes and gives suck to all beings, human and subhuman. All are infants of this Divine Mother. The Greeks who came to India around 300 BC saw in Shiva the reflection of their own god Dionysus. He was the rebel who opposed their classical divinities and sought salvation in esoteric rituals. By the time of the Christian era, the cult of Shiva had captured the minds of all and had spread from Kashmir in the north to Kanyakumari at the very tip of the Indian subcontinent. Now we will look at how the concept of Shiva is dealt with in the Puranic literature. So, as it's kind of illuminated in this chapter, Shiva is this god of contrasts, of seeming contradictions. And honestly, as I've gone deeper and deeper into my own spiritual practices and my own understanding of life, I really have come to understand that the nature of truth exists in contradiction. It's both and. It's both extremes. It's good and bad. There's no these universal conceptions of it has to be what I think it is. It just doesn't apply. It just doesn't apply. And I think a part of the cosmic joke is challenging our ego to be like, well, if God is so gentle and so loving, how can they also be so fierce? If God saves one person and allows another person to die, what is going on here? And so often these contradictions, these contrasts challenge us because we want things to be very linear. We want things to be black and white. That's just not how it is. And that's, once you stop thinking in that way, all of a sudden, everything takes on the form of the divine. Everything has an offering. Everything has something to teach you. And the deeper we move into these things, the more blissful and the more at ease we become, because we're no longer whim to all of these back and forth things. We're no longer going towards pleasure and aversion, because we just appreciate things as they are. If it was always sunny, then over time it would become like a barren desert. You need these storms of life in order to nourish us. And seemingly they're destructive, seemingly they're fearful, but they bring the fruit and salvation of this growth, this abundance that comes from having experienced sort of these contrasts, by having this blissful aspect and this sort of somewhat turbulent aspect, then we're able to find sort of the middle way. We're able to find sort of the nourishment and the sweetness of just being present where we are. And we're not being jerked around so much because we're not trying to make everything fit into our conceptions. And so I really, throughout this whole time, I hope that you guys really just enjoy the sharing of these stories. And so I would just like to go into some chanting. We'll just invite that presence to be here with us. One of the beautiful things about chanting the names of God is that, so Srila Prabhupada, a teacher from the Krishna consciousness of the Hare Krishna tradition, said that chanting was the prescribed yoga of this age. It's the prescribed method for this age, because it's arguably the easiest. Because it said that wherever the name is said, the divine becomes present there. So it's like if I yell your name, if I say, Justin, or Shiva, then I'm typically going to look to see who said my name. So it's the same thing. When we sing the names of the divine, we are inviting them to look upon us, to become present with us. And it's not about our having a perfect singing voice. It's not about being all peaceful today. Even if I don't pronounce it correctly, it doesn't matter. It's all in your intention. It doesn't matter if I yell out the name of Shiva in bliss and love, or I yell it out in anger and frustration. It doesn't matter if I say the name completely wrong or not. It still, even if I say it unconsciously, even if I just accidentally say it still invites that grace to be present with me. So whatever your background is, whatever your tradition is, I invite you to see this as a representation of that divine essence. Shiva is no different than Yahweh, no different than Allah, no different than Krishna, Vishnu, Ram, Buddha's a little bit different, but Buddha, well, he is Buddha as well, but Buddha is not necessarily a god, depending on your perspective. So I just invite you to connect to it in whatever way is natural to you. So thank you guys for joining me. We'll go into some chanting. Shiva Shambho Sada Shiva 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 Shambho Sada Shivaya Shiva Shiva Shambho Sada Shiva 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 Shambho Sada Shiva Shambho Sada Shiva 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 Shambho Sada Shivaya Om Namah Shiva Sada Shiva Om Namah Shiva Sada Shivaya Om Namah Shivaya, 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 Om Namah Shiva Sada Shiva, Om Namah Shiva Sada Shivaya, Om Namah Shiva Sada Shiva, Om Namah Shiva Sada Shivaya, Om Namah Shiva Sada Shiva, Om Namah Shiva Sada Shivaya, Om Namah Shiva Sada Shiva, Om Namah Shiva Sada Shivaya, Om Namah Shiva Sada Shiva, Om Namah Shiva Sada Shivaya, Om Namah Shiva Sada Shiva, Om Namah Shiva Sada Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I look forward to sharing more with you here in the coming weeks. I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and we'll just kind of learn and practice together. So please let me know if you have questions or if you would like me to elaborate more on certain things. Sometimes, I try not to go too far, but also trying not to go, say too little, because it's very easy to just go on and on and on and on and dive into the deepest depths of this, but it's also easy to just forget that, certain things I just know, just because it's been my practice for quite some time. So if you have questions or if you have things that you would like more elaboration on, please feel free to reach out. So thank you guys. I love you. Om Namah Shivaya. Jai Ma.